Long before the era of flying saucers began in 1947, mysterious visitors seemed to take a keen interest in our developing civilization. In the early decades of the 1900s, witnesses across the globe reported encounters with strange craft and their otherworldly occupants. From disc-shaped objects gliding silently over cities, to bizarre beings in diving suits dragging young children aboard their vessels, these early encounters would set the stage for what would become the modern UFO phenomenon. The years surrounding World War I saw a particular surge in activity, with the legendary Red Baron himself allegedly engaging in combat with a massive UFO in 1917. According to his wingman, who kept the story secret for 80 years, they encountered a 150-foot metallic disc ringed with orange lights. After the Baron opened fire, the craft crashed into the forest below, where two small, bald beings emerged from the wreckage and disappeared into the woods. This was just one of many military encounters during the conflict, suggesting these unknown visitors took a special interest in humanity's warfare. As the world entered the 1920s, the nature of these encounters seemed to shift. While sightings became less frequent, they grew increasingly bizarre, from robotic beings with flower-like faces terrorizing a Florida convent school to a Wisconsin farmer who claimed blonde-haired aliens from Saturn stayed on her property for 10 days. The development of aviation brought new witnesses as well, with pilots reporting close encounters with flying manhole covers and mysterious craft that could disable their engines at will. Whatever these phenomena represented, they made it clear that humanity was not alone in the skies above. Before Roswell made UFOs a household name, strange craft were already haunting our skies. In the early 1900s, from the battlefields of World War I to quiet farmlands across the globe, witnesses reported encounters with mysterious airships, glowing discs, and their otherworldly occupants. We'll look at UFO sightings and encounters from 1900 through 1930, and there are a lot more than you'd expect. In the early decades of the 20th century, well before the notable spike in UFO sightings in 1947 marking the onset of the modern UFO era, a multitude of such strange aerial phenomena were already observed in the skies. Notably, the late 1890s and early 1900s were witness to numerous reports of airships and mysterious flying objects, hinting at an enduring presence of enigmatic entities above us. Let's look into this less explored era, the pre-Roswell UFO age, and unearth some of the lesser-known encounters and testimonies that remain documented from time to time. Our journey commences in the dawn of the 1900s, a period surprisingly rich in accounts depicting peculiar machine-like flying crafts. Moreover, among these stories lie scattered interactions with unusual humanoid beings and creature-like entities, their association with the potential UFO sightings yet to be fully understood. We'll begin our exploration right at the turn of the 20th century. In the early days of the 20th century, reports of peculiar flying phenomena emerged echoing sightings from the 1800s. Many of these enigmatic encounters took place in broad daylight, reminiscent of those during the dawn of the modern UFO era in the late 1940s and early 1950s. For instance, in the summertime of 1900 in Cadist, UK, a 12-year-old girl described seeing a disc-shaped object about 20 feet in diameter gliding through the skies as she strolled through the woods. Another daytime observation of a comparable airborne entity took place a few weeks later, just after 7 a.m. on August 2nd in Chignapan, Pueblo, Mexico. Moving into the following year, in January 1901, in Bournebrook, UK, a local resident, around 8 p.m., noticed a vessel in the firmament that cruised by at a close proximity, revealing humanoid figures on board. Concurrently, during an evening in New Haven, Missouri, a trio of friends exploring the woods caught sight of a disc-like object soaring above. Subsequently, at approximately 1 p.m. on March 7th in Silver City, New Mexico, a local newspaper documented an account of a flying machine resembling 3 cigar-shaped entities seemingly tethered together, with one suspended below the other 2. In the warm summer of 1901, once more in the quaint village of Bournebrook in the United Kingdom, unfolded an eerily similar encounter to that of January. This time, as the clock struck 2 p.m., a 10-year-old child gazed in astonishment as an unidentified flying craft glided past their garden, revealing several humanoid figures within, mirroring the previous sighting. Then, on the evening of September 7th at 7:30 p.m. in Pas-de-la-Loire, France, 2 individuals witnessed a peculiar object lingering in the sky for approximately a minute before vanishing. As the early 1900s progressed, reports of peculiar machine-like objects in the heavens emerged from various corners of the globe. In early 1902, in Boshof-Oranjevrijstad, South Africa, a series of strange booms echoed through the region in succession. What adds intrigue to this account is the possibility of these booms being sonic blasts from an undetected aerial craft, an idea foreign to that era. Several weeks later in Devon, England, Colonel Marwick observed several peculiar sights in the sky, likening them to vividly colored objects resembling miniature suns or toy balloons. At 7:40 p.m., on February 9th, in Paris, France, numerous residents were startled by an unusual meteor that performed intricate maneuvers such as turning, looping, and curving before disappearing into the horizon. The act of turning suggests that the phenomenon witnessed by Parisians that evening likely defied the characteristics of a typical meteor. Later the same year, just after 3 a.m. on October 28th in the Gulf of Guinea off the coast of West Africa, 3 crew members aboard the Fort Salisbury beheld a massive, shadowy object ahead of them, casting its luminous beams down towards the water. This mysterious entity eventually plunged beneath the waves, leaving the crew puzzled and intrigued. In just over a fortnight, on the 13th of November in Harris Park, New South Wales, Australia, a local resident observed an unusual object gliding through the sky amidst a severe storm. The subsequent week, on the 20th of November in Adelaide, South Australia, 2 astronomers at an observatory cited a brilliant globular light tracing an arc across the sky, visible for approximately 4 minutes. Shortly after 11 p.m. in early 1903 in Argenteuil, France, a group of 5 individuals witnessed a swift-moving red object traversing the sky, covering about 4 miles in a span of 20 minutes. Equipped with a pair of binoculars, one of the witnesses scrutinized the anomaly, certain it was not a mere balloon. Nearly 2 months later, on the evening of March 17, 1903, in Helmer, Indiana, an entire family gazed at a glowing cigar-shaped object suspended over nearby trees. After deliberation, the witnesses decided to approach the peculiar craft. Abruptly, as they neared, it ascended swiftly and vanished with a rapid zigzag motion. Just past 10 p.m. one evening in early 1904 in Rolling Prairie, Indiana, Tom Darby, accompanied by his brother and mother, witnessed 2 whitish-blue objects hovering a short distance ahead, about 10 feet from the ground. The objects then glided towards a nearby barn before finally disappearing behind a hill. Weeks later, just after 6 a.m. on the 28th of February, aboard the USS Supply, a peculiar sight unfolded before the eyes of several crew members. Among them, Lieutenant Frank H. Schofield stood as the main observer, recounting the sudden appearance of 3 vivid red objects below the clouds. Initially drawing near the ship, these 3 enigmatic objects then began to ascend rapidly, their trajectory seemingly directed away from the Earth. Egg-shaped in form, they lingered within view for a little over 2 minutes. With the turn of the year to 1905, sightings of curious aerial contraptions grew more frequent. In the town of Cherbourg, France, an unusual oval reddish-colored object loitered overhead for weeks into the early months of the year, distinguished from any known planet or star solely by its fixed presence over the town. Similarly, in Bukovina, Romania, a retired doctor recounted encountering a brightly glowing, elongated saucer-shaped object dwarfing the moon in size as it traversed the skies and ultimately vanished into the horizon. On the opposite side of the globe, around 1:30 a.m. in Silshe, California, Mr. J.A. Jackson found himself in the presence of a peculiar, bright luminance hurtling towards him. As the light grew nearer, its source revealed itself to be a craft reminiscent of an airship, albeit devoid of the conventional gas balloon. This same object was also spotted by a local postmaster. Further north, in Portland, Oregon, multiple accounts emerged of a peculiar buzzing object traversing the city skies. Across the vastness of the Atlantic and Llangollen, Wales, locals gazed up to behold a shadowy presence aloft, described by some as akin to a gigantic winged pig with webbed feet. In the serene afternoon of an April day in 1905 in Perm, Russia, a resident returning from church was startled by an unusual sight. Floating overhead was a peculiar craft, accompanied by the sight of a humanoid figure apparently at the controls. Moving forward to the bright day of June 27th, 1 p.m. on Andros Island in the Bahamas, an employee of the Atlantic Underwater Testing Evaluation Center strolled along the beach on a day off. Suddenly, the tranquil scene was shattered by the urgent cries of the Coast Guard, who was fixated on the sky above. Following their gaze, the employee spotted a metallic object traversing the skies in silence, swiftly circling the islands. Venturing into the eerie night of August 3rd, around 1:30 a.m. in Imperial Valley, California, numerous residents were captivated by a strange object of around 100 feet in length with colossal wings. The object moved through the air in an undulating manner, emanating blinding lights that dazzled the onlookers. Soon after, in a nearby desert, 3 more individuals witnessed a similar enigmatic flying object. In the tranquil setting of Heiden in the Netherlands, as the clock struck 10 p.m. on July 2, 1905, a young man named Sufian was thrust into a surreal experience that initially felt like a vivid dream, but may have been one of the earliest documented encounters with extraterrestrial beings in the 20th century. This remarkable and unsettling account stems from the meticulous research archives of Alberto Rosales, enveloped in intrigue and mystery. In the dead of night, Sufian awoke to the surreal sight of himself gazing down at his own form lying in bed. Beside him stood a humanoid figure, unmistakably female, her piercing gaze fixed upon him. Clad in flowing robes, her skin bore a striking hue of pale gray. As he came to his senses, the figure loomed directly over him, extending a hand towards his chest. A sharp, searing pain shot through him, as if his very ribs were being shifted by her touch. Despite his struggles, a sensation of being physically immobilized gripped him, leaving him powerless. Abruptly, the agony dissipated, and the female presence vanished into thin air. Rather than jolted awake in alarm, Sufian found himself slipping back into sleep. Upon waking, the memory of the encounter struck him like a bolt. A lingering soreness pervaded his torso, yet upon inspection, not a single mark marred his chest. No scars, no bruises, no scratches. The ache persisted for days, but gradually faded away. The nature of that strange occurrence remains shrouded in mystery. If one dares to entertain the notion that it transcended mere dream, it hints at a peculiar extraterrestrial interlude, perhaps an implantation or a corrective procedure on Sufian's person. And if the latter holds true, one cannot help but wonder, why did this enigmatic alien entity take such a keen interest in him? During the latter half of the first decade of the 1900s, sightings experienced a notable uptick. In early 1906, a crew member aboard the ship St. Andrew near the Canadian coast of Newfoundland witnessed the peculiar entry of 3 meteors into the water ahead of the vessel in a remarkably controlled manner, with strikingly synchronized appearances. The observer estimated that these objects were roughly 5 miles away. Shortly after the third object submerged, another crew member alerted the witness to a closer anomaly about a mile away. This new object, observed moving erratically with zigzag motions through the sky, resembled a metallic, disc-shaped craft that emitted an intense brightness, illuminating a wide radius extending over tens of miles. Around the same period, in Mitchell, South Dakota, an event unfolded reminiscent of the airship sightings from a decade before. According to accounts, young Herbert DeMott witnessed a peculiar airship touching down near the well on his family's farm. Upon approaching, he described the ship's doors sliding open, revealing human-like figures who extended an invitation for him to enter, an offer which he accepted without hesitation. The young boy insisted that the occupants were fluent in English and, although friendly, refused to disclose their origin. He also claimed that the object remained grounded by the planet's magnetism until they flipped a lever to release it. The occupants' main objective was to extract water from a nearby well, a common theme in airship sightings to generate electricity. In another of Albert Rosali's fascinating cases, an intriguing encounter took place in June 1906 in Bertha, Nebraska. On that evening, a 17-year-old Swedish immigrant named Carlson was en route to a party in a horse-drawn carriage just before sunset. About half a mile ahead, Carlson noticed two figures walking and attempted to catch up to them to offer a ride, but his horses grew agitated as they drew near. Despite this, Carlson continued forward, trying to calm the horses, only to find that the two mysterious men had vanished without a trace, leaving him bewildered in the open countryside. He paused to collect his thoughts before resuming his journey to the grand public ball, intent on uncovering the enigmatic identities of the two strangers. To his dismay, his efforts at spotting them amidst the lively crowd proved futile. The elusive duo's origins and possible extraterrestrial nature remained shrouded in mystery. Approximately 2 months later, on the 17th of August, 1906, in Orinoco, Indiana, a local resident named John Warner reported a peculiar sighting while seated on his rear porch. A mysterious airship descended into view a short distance away, and to Warner's astonishment, its occupants addressed him by name, inquiring about the route to New York. The airship, adorned in green hues and radiant lights, swiftly vanished into the horizon. Notably, Warner, a reputable and forthright individual, bore witness to this inexplicable event, leaving it as an unresolved enigma. In the subsequent month of September, in Syracuse, New York, an even more extraordinary incident transpired. As detailed in a local newspaper article, Sackville Layson, the esteemed president of the Society for Psychical Research, professed to have journeyed to Mars through his psychic abilities. He vividly depicted the planet enveloped in crimson and greenish clouds, inhabited by two divergent tribes, one towering in stature, the other comprising diminutive beings. Given the fantastical nature of his claims, skepticism is perhaps the most prudent response. In 1907, a bizarre series of events unfolded that would challenge our understanding of the unknown. From a torpedo-shaped UFO witnessed by a bishop and former governor in Vermont, to an encounter with an apparent living dinosaur that shrugged off rifle fire in Colombia. But perhaps the most intriguing was the mysterious object that emerged from the North Sea in 1908, engaging in what appeared to be a deliberate, color-coded light communication with a fishing boat crew before vanishing beneath the waves. In the summer of 1907, amidst the bustling town of Burlington, Vermont, a peculiar event captivated the attention of numerous witnesses, including Bishop John Michaud and former Governor Alexander Woodbury. An enigmatic torpedo-shaped UFO suddenly manifested in the sky, exploding before leisurely hovering for a fleeting moment. Just as swiftly as it appeared, the mysterious object darted off into the horizon at an astonishing speed, leaving the bewildered spectators in a state of perplexity, as no plausible explanation was ever proffered to demystify this strange occurrence. In the serene solitude of Solomos de Aguas, Colombia, in the crisp air of October 1907, a tale of surreal intrigue unfolded, recounted through the testimony of the intrepid German explorer Franz Hermann Schmidt and his companion, Captain Rudolf Flang. Venturing into the uncharted wilderness, they stumbled upon a secluded valley with a tranquil, shallow lake. Initially elated by their discovery, their mood shifted when they stumbled upon imposing, unfamiliar tracks leading to the water's edge. As they observed the foliage around them, peculiar signs of leaf consumption hinted at the presence of a substantial creature, prompting thought on the immense scale of the enigmatic entity roaming these unfrequented lands. The team made a decision to establish a camp down in the valley, and the next day they ventured back to the waters for further exploration. While navigating the waters in their canoes and boats, a sudden, loud splashing sound echoed from the water's edge, sending them into a panic. Hastily, they steered their boats toward the center of the lake, away from the shoreline. In a vivid recollection, Schmidt remembered a large, dark shape rising among the branches, causing a great commotion. As the guides paddled toward the lake's center, the tumult on the shore persisted, accompanied by the frightening cries of monkeys startled by the mysterious creature. Silence enveloped the scene for about 10 minutes. After this momentary pause, the commotion resumed, and the source of disturbance emerged from the foliage. Schmidt described how a head, roughly the size of a beer keg and resembling that of a tapir, peeked over the bushes. The eyes, small and dull like those of an alligator, gazed out. A long, knotted alligator-like neck extended downward as the creature gradually revealed more of its body, reminiscent of a dinosaur. Despite the approaching monstrous beast, Schmidt noted that it seemed oblivious to their presence or unconcerned by it. Drawing nearer, the creature came within 150 feet of the onlookers and guides, who observed in awe. As more of the creature's body came into view, its dinosaur-like features became more pronounced. Before the group could ponder their next move, the two men unleashed a flurry of rifle shots at the creature. Confident in their marksmanship, they were perplexed to see that none of the bullets seemed to faze the creature, merely succeeding in provoking it rather than harming it. After a tense moment, the creature swiftly submerged under the water, gracefully slipping away. Urgency gripped the guides as they resumed rowing, eager to distance themselves from the mysterious entity. Eventually reaching the safety of the shore, they hastened away from the water's edge. Glancing back, the eerie beast had vanished without a trace. In the early months of 1908, off the Delaware coast, the Mohican, an English ship helmed by Captain Urquhart en route to Philadelphia, encountered a peculiar phenomenon. A peculiar, dense, glowing mist materialized out of thin air, enveloping the vessel. Stranger still, this fog-like substance exhibited a peculiar magnetic influence on the ship's instruments, momentarily adhering metallic objects to the deck. After a few minutes, the mysterious mist ascended into the sky, dissolving away. Simultaneously, over Bridgewater, Massachusetts, locals observed a spherical black object with a dazzling beam of light hovering overhead before vanishing into the distance. Across the country, in early 1908, in Tacoma, Washington, witnesses reported a reddish cigar-shaped entity gliding through the skies above the town. Several newspapers covered the incident, some hypothesizing it could be a Japanese espionage contraption, despite lacking any substantial evidence. On a warm summer night, around 10:30 p.m. on June 27th, in the city of Aalborg, Denmark, an unusual sight captured the attention of multiple witnesses. An object adorned with lights and wings gracefully glided through the darkened sky. Despite its mysterious nature, rumors quickly spread among the locals, with many speculating that these aerial phenomena were secret military devices of British origin. Fast forward to July 11th, deep in the ancient Sakota Mountains near Vladivostok, Russia, a peculiar event unfolded according to the curious findings detailed in the research archives of Charles Fort. A lone hiker trudging through the wilderness stumbled upon a puzzling discovery, a bizarre marking resembling a human footprint etched on the path ahead. Strangely, as he inspected this footprint-like mark, his trusty canine companion sensed an unseen threat, emitting low growls into the stillness of the night. With a mix of trepidation and curiosity, the hiker cautiously surveyed his surroundings, only to catch a fleeting glimpse of something darting into the nearby undergrowth. In a bold move, he hurled a rock toward the rustling bushes, anticipating a response. To his astonishment, instead of a startled creature emerging, the hiker was met with a sudden rustle of powerful wings taking flight. From the shadows, a monstrous, winged entity emerged, soaring gracefully into the night sky and disappearing over the shimmering river below. Later, recounting his eerie encounter to the native tribes of the region, he learned that many others had crossed paths with this strange being over the years, each discovering strange footprints left in the earth. In October 1908, above the North Sea near Lowestoft in the UK, the crew of a fishing boat observed a large star emerging from the water. This object then moved toward their vessel. In an attempt to communicate, a crew member launched a red flare into the sky. In a surprising turn of events, the object responded with its own red beam of light directly above the ship. Responding with a white flare, the witness triggered a blue light from the aerial craft. After a few moments, the cigar-shaped object vanished into the sea's distance. Around 11:30 p.m. in Ware, Massachusetts, a witness at an electric plant spotted a peculiar-shaped object gliding through the sky. Strangely, he mentioned seeing several figures inside the object. The final year of the 1900s was notably eventful, especially with numerous airship sightings inundating the UK. During early 1909, in Pontfétan-le-Fique, France, an intriguing incident unfolded according to archaeologist Zachary Rouzic. One evening, three friends were on their way back home after an evening in a nearby village when they noticed something white beside the road near a hedge. Approaching the hedge, one witness saw the object suddenly rise and ascend with a growing luminance. In early 1909, in Lloyds, Maryland, a local farmer named Albert Evans stumbled upon a distressing scene as he walked along a dirt road one evening. Several dead cattle. While surveying the area after this grim discovery, he caught sight of a mysterious being that seemed to be part man, part beast, loitering in a nearby field. The darkness of the night obscured any distinct features, revealing only a looming figure standing at a towering 7 feet tall. Simultaneously, across the Atlantic Ocean, two 9-year-old twin brothers left home alone were engrossed in a game as they awaited the return of their father, a gamekeeper. To their bewilderment, they witnessed the passing of two diminutive figures they described as two little men, adorned in peculiar tunics, who casually strolled past them and descended the staircase before disappearing from view. Measuring only about 1.5 feet in height, these mysterious visitors had gray hair that added to their creepy aura. In Bern, Switzerland, during the same period, a 6-year-old girl crossed the Aire River Bridge on her way to meet her mother after work. Along her path, she encountered a peculiar sight. A woman of ethereal appearance, not of great stature and entirely white, appeared to float before her, draped in a gossamer veil from head to toe. As the girl stood, transfixed by this spectral vision, her mother's approach drew her attention. Pointing towards the mysterious figure, the girl watched as it remained visible to her, but invisible to her mother. After a brief moment, the enigmatic figure gracefully departed, vanishing from sight. In the spring of 1909, a mysterious UFO sighting captivated the town of Worcester, Massachusetts. Local residents were startled as a peculiar light approached them, revealing itself to be part of a large, dark, machine-like object that began to circle above the town before vanishing into the distance. Off the coast of Dong Nguyen, Vietnam, fishermen encountered a similar enigmatic phenomenon. A dark, elongated object, glowing brightly, hovered over the city before plunging into the sea, disappearing from sight after lingering for at least 10 minutes. Throughout the latter half of 1909, reports of unusual flying objects became more frequent. In Florence, Italy, on the morning of April 24th at 9:20 a.m., witnesses were astonished by a white, ovoid object gliding above the city, some even claiming to have glimpsed figure-clad occupants within. Several weeks later, in Kelmarsh, England, on the evening of May 13th at 9 p.m., eyewitnesses beheld an elongated craft measuring approximately 150 feet across, with similar occupant sightings as in Florence. That same eventful night, just 45 minutes later in King's Lynn, England, a luminous cigar-shaped entity traversed the skies, casting its brilliance over the surroundings. Accompanied by a distinct whirring sound, the object bore two humanoid beings beneath it before fading into the distance. The evening after, amidst the English setting of Blyth, an observer recounted a peculiar sighting of a cigar-shaped entity hovering above the North Sea waters. This mysterious object emitted multiple luminous beams toward a passing ship, before swiftly darting across the sky and halting its journey over another vessel approximately a mile away. In the subsequent month, just past 4 a.m. on the 16th of June in Dong Hoi, Annam, two fishermen beheld a similar elongated figure traversing the heavens, casting its brilliance upon the town below, remaining visible for almost 10 minutes. A comparable spectacle unfolded the following month, on the 19th of July in Oamaru, New Zealand, as three locals glimpsed a brilliantly illuminated entity lingering above the township. Then 4 days later, in Kelso, also situated in New Zealand, during the afternoon hours around 1 p.m., several young students reported a peculiar airship descending from the skies, playfully hovering near the schoolyard before vanishing once more. Then, in the late hours just before midnight at Kaka Point, New Zealand, a band of adolescents frolicking on the beach bore witness to a mystifying, illuminated object traversing the skies above. The radiance emanating from this enigma was potent enough to cast light upon the earth below, illuminating each structure. After circling the beachfront, the object veered seaward and gradually vanished into the horizon. In the evening of December 22nd, the city of Worcester, Massachusetts, was graced by the presence of a mysterious object gliding through the sky. Numerous residents of the city were captivated by this entity as they observed peculiar beams of light emanating from it and reaching towards the earth below. After vanishing for a brief moment, the object made a curious reappearance approximately 2 hours later. Adding to the intrigue, reports in the newspapers suggested that this object met its fate with a crash just west of Chicago later that same evening. Despite thorough searches, no remnants of the object were ever discovered. In 1910, as the world moved closer to war, strange visitors seemed to take an increasing interest in human affairs. From cigar-shaped craft diving into the Sea of Normandy to bird-headed beings observed through colorful windows in Maryland, the skies were filled with mysterious objects and their otherworldly occupants. But perhaps most incredible was the legendary dogfight between the Red Baron and a massive UFO in 1917, a secret kept by his wingman for 80 years before finally being revealed. As our world inched closer to an unprecedented global conflict, sightings of peculiar objects in the sky surged. This surge was amplified by our own heightened vantage point from the air, offering a unique perspective on these mysterious phenomena. The growing familiarity with conventional aircraft of that era underscored the extraordinary nature of what was being observed. Further encounters unveiled incidents with bizarre humanoid figures, some reminiscent of what we now identify as gray aliens. The presence of these beings in the early 1900s could potentially be linked, at least in part, to the turmoil of the First World War. In one of the initial sightings of the new decade, a French fishing crew witnessed a strange object descending and submerging into the sea off the Normandy coast in early 1910. Concurrently, in St. Mern, Cornwall, England, two locals witnessed a peculiar red object maneuvering through the clouds overhead. Strangely, they claimed to have spotted several dwarf-like creatures within the object peering down at them. In Kanawala, Guyana, sightings of creatures resembling the mysterious beings emerged. As documented in Lauren Coleman's Curious Encounters, a local resident magistrate, while searching for gold near Potato River, encountered a group of diminutive creatures adorned with reddish-brown fur. The beings fixed their gaze upon him for a fleeting moment before retreating cautiously into the depths of the jungle. A compelling encounter unfolded near Estella Navarra, Spain, as recounted by Iker Jimenez in Cursed Paradise. Ricardo Jimenez, a cowherder riding home late at night, glimpsed a peculiar figure by the wayside. After dismounting and approaching the creature, he was struck by its distressing, horrible, distorted features and elongated limbs. Startled, he swiftly retreated to his horse, urging it away from the unsettling presence. In Invercargill, Southland, New Zealand, a humanoid figure sighting coincided with the observation of a cigar-shaped object. Positioned at the craft's doorway, an undescribable figure appeared to be emanating unintelligible sounds in an unknown language. In the early months of the year, peculiar sightings of elongated aerial vessels captured the attention of many across the United States. On the 12th of January, at approximately 9 a.m. in Chattanooga, Tennessee, a spectacle unfolded as around 1,000 local residents gazed upon an otherworldly craft meandering through the sky in an unconventional manner. Just a quarter of an hour later in Huntsville, Alabama, per documented by Frank Edwards, a remarkably similar object was spotted maneuvering with an uncanny resemblance. 3 days thereafter, in Knoxville, Tennessee, an almost identical enigma graced the skies, witnessed by astonished onlookers. Later that very day, as twilight descended over Fulton County, Arkansas, an account from a local newspaper painted a vivid picture of Myrtle Lee and her brother Jack, who claimed to have spotted a luminous entity suspended just above the treetops. Myrtle vividly described the craft as silver-hued, akin to a zeppelin, devoid of windows or wings. Their mesmerizing observation was brief as the craft abruptly ascended before vanishing in the blink of an eye. Despite recounting their experience to their parents and peers, their tale was met with skepticism. At the break of dawn, on the 20th of January in Memphis, Tennessee, reports from Lucius Farish's research notes detailed multiple witnesses observing various objects soaring overhead, each moving autonomously. Come the eve of February 5th, in Greer, Idaho, a resident along the Whitney River reported a celestial entity gliding through the firmament beyond the realms of recognized earthly aircraft, as chronicled by Doubt magazine. In the early spring of 1910, several weeks later, in Violetville, Maryland, a young boy named Lawrence Crone was strolling near a local baseball field when his attention was captured by a peculiar sight. Hovering at a short distance above the ground was a blimp or cigar-shaped object that he estimated to be about 100 feet long with a metallic surface. Positioned just over a pine tree some 200 feet away from him, the object featured a row of rectangular glass-like windows displaying various colors. Through these windows, Lawrence could catch glimpses of several occupants inside. To his amazement, these humanoid figures sported pigeon-like heads adorned with strangely shaped helmets. Their features lacked visible noses or ears, but they did possess two round spots for eyes. Clad in what seemed to be a soft gray or light-colored gown resembling fur, around 20 of these bird-headed beings resided within the craft. As two young men walked by, Lawrence drew their attention to the strange phenomenon. However, upon witnessing it, both men were gripped with instant terror and fled the scene. By the time the object began to ascend into the sky and drift away slowly, Lawrence's mother had caught up to him. Together, they stood and observed the object until it vanished into the distance. In the early evening of May 4th, a similar object made its presence known in Cernaty, Ukraine. Ian Hobana's report details how the witness observed the object moving in an unconventional manner, deviating from the expected behavior of a regular aircraft. The witness estimated its size to be approximately 300 feet across, and it remained visible for about 3 minutes. Just a little over 2 weeks later, in Alma, Illinois, a local resident reported sighting a similar object, followed by another account in Vansbro, Sweden weeks after that, where the witness described the craft as more resembling a disc. During the summer of 1910, another sighting of a disc-shaped object was reported in Vernal, Utah. The witness, who was riding on horseback at the time, noticed his horse becoming greatly disturbed, prompting him to dismount. It was then that he spotted a peculiar, disc-shaped object hovering just above the ground. The object was adorned with a row of lights encircling its edge, accompanied by a faint buzzing sound. After observing the object for a short while, it swiftly ascended into the air and rapidly departed. In Jewett, Texas, around 9 p.m., a group of 6 women gazing skyward reported witnessing a peculiar object traversing the sky in an unconventional manner. As the summer transitioned into autumn, strange aerial phenomena continued to be observed. In late July, in Normandy, France, a peculiar elongated object zipped across the sky with remarkable speed, performing unconventional maneuvers. Approximately a month later, at 9 p.m. on August 30th in New York, nearly 100 individuals reported witnessing an almost identical object, as recounted in Flying Saucer Review. Moving forward 3 weeks, once again in New York, but this time in broad daylight, numerous city residents saw a gleaming disc-shaped craft gliding above the skyline. The subsequent evening, in the Dunkirk region of New York, a disc-shaped craft briefly touched down in a remote area before swiftly ascending and vanishing into the distance. On October 27th, around 10 a.m. in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, Canada, as documented in Richard Hall's research compilation and his book From Airships to Arnold, a preliminary catalog of UFO reports in the early 20th century, 1900 to 1946, a cigar-shaped object adorned with red and green lights at each end, alongside a brilliant, white headlight-esque glow, cruised over the town at a mere 600 feet altitude. Several weeks later, during early December 1910 in Massachusetts, yet another flying saucer-like object captivated the observations of multiple witnesses. Approximately a week later, just outside Listowel in County Kerry, Ireland, 2 men spotted 2 mysterious lights in the distance, roughly a mile away. Initially mistaking them for the beacon of a lighthouse, their perceptions changed as they drew nearer. The lights began to sway up and down, gradually expanding in size. To their astonishment, within each growing light emerged a luminous figure bearing a human-like form. This bewildering display captivated their gaze for a moment before vanishing into the night. After the eventful year of 1910, sightings in 1911 showed a slight decline. Nevertheless, there were still captivating encounters to ponder. According to the account in Modern Mysteries of Britain by Janet and Colin Board, a resident of the Isle of Man in early 1911 witnessed a crowd of diminutive beings clad in red attire and moving in military fashion. One evening, just off the coast of Reykjavik in Iceland, an intriguing occurrence unfolded, hinting at a potential encounter with an otherworldly craft. On that fateful night, the whaling vessel, Ormkey Bell, navigated the icy waters and nearly collided with a mysterious ship emerging from the mist. Strikingly, the vessel appeared unmanned, moving in an inexplicable, peculiar manner upon the water's surface. Several weeks later, another peculiar incident unfolded in Chisbury, Wiltshire, England. Charles Tilden Smith detailed the event in the British science journal Nature. Smith himself beheld 2 fan- or triangular-shaped heavy shadows projected onto the clouds above him. Though he couldn't directly spot them, he was convinced that these shadows were connected to unseen objects lingering elsewhere in the sky. Fast forward to the summer of 1911 in Derbyshire, England, where 6-year-old Mary B. had a startling encounter on farmland. She spotted a dark, cigar-shaped craft hovering nearby, with at least one figure visible in a section resembling a cabin. On July 2nd, as documented in the July 3, 1911 issue of the Windsor Record, a UFO was witnessed hovering over Chatham Township near Windsor, Ontario, Canada for multiple days. Eventually, it descended close to the ground, remaining visible for a brief period. A distinct whirring sound emitted from the object, followed by a sudden, bright illumination before it swiftly vanished into the sky. In the early months of 1912, on a Vancouver farm in British Columbia, Canada, young Abram Penner, at the age of 6, found himself amidst a peculiar event. As he played, a mysterious craft touched down near him, catching his attention. When recounting the experience to his father later, Penner described a group of unfamiliar men emerging from the object, examining him closely. They seemed particularly fixated on his hands, noting they were different from theirs, and remarked on his round feet and short legs and lack of discernible knees or elbows. What intrigued him even more was that these visitors seemed to communicate solely through the power of the mind, allowing him to understand them completely. Penner subsequently revealed that his father strictly forbade him from speaking to anyone about the incident. Simultaneously, halfway across the Atlantic Ocean on the island of Muck in Highland, Scotland, 2 young boys strolling along the shore in search of driftwood stumbled upon an astonishing sight. They came face to face with 2 diminutive men sporting green vests. The tiny figures swiftly directed their focus toward the boys, engaging them in conversation in a mix of English and Gaelic, inquiring about their activities. Positioned behind the men, the boys caught sight of a peculiar boat, on which an equally unusual woman gestured for them to approach. Preferring caution, the boys declined the mysterious woman's invitation and swiftly departed. Later on, they were found in a state of disbelief, seated on nearby rocks, still reeling from the unexpected encounter. In early 1912, Janet and Colin Board shared another recount recounting a peculiar event near Gallipolis, Ohio. A man and his mother were gathered in the woods, picking berries in a clearing when an unusual dark object descended from the sky and settled just ahead of them, hovering slightly above the trees. As they attempted to leave, they spotted a peculiar figure walking at a close distance, moving alongside them. This figure donned dark attire and appeared to be unusually bulky with a distinct lack of a visible neck. Startled, the pair hurriedly ran away from the scene. Upon looking back after a fleeting moment, they discovered that both the figure and the object had vanished into thin air. In another mysterious episode transpiring in Kelowna, Germany, an incident involving peculiar humanoid entities took place. One fateful night, while playing in his bedroom, Ernest Yakov suddenly felt compelled to turn around. To his astonishment, he beheld 2 peculiar humanoid beings standing in close proximity to his bed. He observed them for a brief period before they inexplicably faded away, vanishing without a trace. In a similarly peculiar occurrence recounted in Rebus magazine, an incident unfolds near the banks of the river Volga in Russia. As told, Mr. Deichkin and an unidentified companion were journeying homeward in separate sleds by the river Volga when they encountered 2 men of curious appearance by the roadside. Bringing their sleds to a halt, Deichkin extended an offer of a ride to the men, at least part way toward their destination. The men accepted the offer, and the group resumed their journey. However, not long after, one of the men cryptically warned Deichkin of an impending severe storm, advising him to alter their course and seek refuge in a nearby town for the night instead of heading for home. Despite knowing no such town existed closer by, Deichkin, taken aback, acquiesced and redirected their path. During a brief moment, one of the travelers suddenly exclaimed that the town loomed ahead. Startled, Deichkin gazed in the indicated direction and beheld a vibrant, luminous city seemingly unlike any he had ever encountered. Alongside his companion, they made a beeline for this radiant urban center. Yet, upon their arrival, an eerie and abrupt dread engulfed them both. To their astonishment, the peculiar duo had vanished without a trace, leaving the bewildered men unable to recollect their fate. Bewildered and fearful, they retraced their path on their sleds. Glancing back moments later, the dazzling city had inexplicably vanished. One may ponder whether this city could have been an extraterrestrial vessel, and if the bizarre figures had tried to whisk them away. As the 20th century progressed, particularly in its latter half when UFOs captured the public imagination, it became apparent that sightings of these potentially otherworldly crafts surged in regions ravaged by war. Instances like the Foo Fighter sightings during World War II, as well as numerous accounts during the Korean and Vietnam Wars in the ensuing decades, highlight this trend. It's not entirely unexpected, then, that reports of these peculiar phenomena and encounters with equally mysterious entities multiplied as humanity grappled with its first global conflict. Baron Manfred von Richthofen, famously known as the Red Baron, was one of the most renowned fighter pilots during the First World War. A gripping tale from 8 decades past surfaced, recounting an extraordinary encounter in which the German ace pilot allegedly engaged and brought down what appeared to be an otherworldly aircraft. Despite lingering skepticism surrounding the claim, a similar incident occurred around the same era on the opposite side of the Atlantic Ocean in the United States. These peculiar events were not uncommon amidst the chaos of the First World War. Could these mysterious crafts have been alien spectators observing yet another human conflict? Or was their presence merely coincidental during those tumultuous times? This intriguing account has captivated audiences across various online platforms and literature, notably featured in Frank Joseph's book Military Encounters with Extraterrestrials: The Real War of the Worlds. The Red Baron story remained concealed for 80 years until Peter Waitsrick, a wingman of the Baron, revealed the encounter in 1999, sparking widespread coverage in newspapers, magazines, and the digital realm. As the sun began to cast its light on the 13th of March in 1917, Baron Manfred von Richthofen and Waitsrick embarked on their routine morning patrol over German-held territory, soaring into the skies from an airfield in western Belgium. At a mere 25 years old, Richthofen led the Josta 11 fighter squadron, renowned for bringing down 80 enemy planes during its illustrious career. Revered by many as a German national hero, his legacy was firmly established. While von Richthofen's own words are absent from the tale, as he met his fate in April 1918, the implication by a fellow German pilot adds a hint of credibility to the narrative. The events of that fateful morning unfolded innocuously for about an hour before an extraordinary encounter captured their attention. Against the backdrop of a clear sky and favorable visibility, the pilots beheld an inexplicable sight. A colossal metallic disc encircled by rippling orange lights loomed directly ahead. This extraordinary craft, stretching nearly 150 feet across, dwarfed their own planes by over 100 feet. In a moment of swift decision, von Richthofen unleashed a barrage of gunfire at the mysterious object. Witnessing the direct impact of the aircraft's discharge striking the disc, it plummeted earthward akin to a falling rock, crashing into the forest below and causing a tumultuous cascade of splintered tree limbs. In a scene even more peculiar, the pilots gazed down at the mangled remains of the aircraft below them. To their astonishment, they witnessed 2 small, bald beings emerge from the wreckage, only to vanish into the shelter of the forest. Upon their return to base, both men filed an official report with their superiors. Despite this, they were strictly instructed never to discuss the event with anyone. Both pilots dutifully obeyed this directive. While Waitsrick confessed to privately sharing the incident with his wife and grandchildren, he refrained from speaking further. He continued his military service, eventually becoming a flight captain for Lufthansa. However, after 80 years and no longer affiliated with the military, Waitsrick finally broke his silence. His disclosure raised suspicions among many, including those in UFO communities. How could a mere machine gun from the First World War era inflict such damage on an alleged advanced extraterrestrial craft? Although skeptics may question the validity of the account, the encounter's details align with numerous incidents from the latter half of the 20th century. Furthermore, as we will soon discover, additional sightings during that period may lend further credibility to the story. Waitsrick recalled that initially they speculated the object might be a U.S. experimental aircraft, poised to enter the war within weeks. However, as subsequent decades unfolded, along with numerous UFO sightings, Waitsrick's wingman from the incident day remarked in 1999 that the object resembled the saucer-shaped spaceships that had been reported over the past 5 decades. He confidently asserted that there was no doubt in my mind that the sighting that morning involved a spacecraft from another planet. Additionally, the two figures who emerged shortly after were clearly extraterrestrial beings seeking refuge from potential threats. Multiple factors hindered Weitrich's credibility. Notably, the initial report appeared in the sensationalistic tabloid Weekly World News, known for its penchant for embellishing stories. Weitrich later clarified that mainstream newspapers just refused to publish his account. Furthermore, many skeptics struggled to believe that primitive weaponry from the early 20th century could easily bring down a technologically advanced aircraft with a single shot. However, considering accounts of recovered alien craft allegedly composed of remarkably sturdy yet thin material, the idea becomes more plausible. These materials, while incredibly strong, could still be susceptible to damage from conventional ammunition. Prior to the era of the Red Baron, numerous reports of peculiar sightings had surfaced in the lead-up to World War I. In early 1914, near Ontario, Canada, witnesses observed a mysterious object floating on Georgian Bay. Perplexingly, figures atop the craft seemed to be manipulating an unidentified device in the water. Upon being noticed, the entities swiftly retreated inside the craft, which then ascended into the sky and disappeared into the distance. Weeks after, as recounted in a letter featured in the CUFO's Associate Newsletter, Volume 3, Number 6, a fresh encounter with an anomalous object and its inhabitants played out in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. While at a local refuse site, the witness was alerted by an odd, melodic humming noise. With a swift motion, the witness shifted focus to the source of the sound, only to find a peculiar disc-shaped entity with a rounded top and a drab-gray hue, suspended just above the fence. Soon after, a group of humanoid figures with distinctly round heads emerged from the craft, but swiftly retreated as the object descended into the sky and vanished. During the same period, a baffling and somewhat unsettling incident transpired in Loire, France. At approximately 4 a.m., Mr. Perret was stirred from his slumber by a tap on his back. Upon turning, he was astounded to encounter a humanoid form resembling the stature of a 10-year-old child, positioned behind him. This perplexing figure sported a notably white, somewhat gleaming face and attire consisting of a shiny one-piece garment. After a brief pause, the entity proceeded towards the door and promptly dissipated into nothingness. In the year 1914, as time advanced, peculiar sightings of unidentified flying objects were documented worldwide. For instance, a disc-shaped anomaly was observed in broad daylight by a 15-year-old in Sweden, while in Saint-Léonard-de-Noblat, France, witnesses reported a round, greenish object hovering near a hillside before swiftly ascending into the sky and vanishing at great speed. Concurrently, in Ukraine, several cigar-shaped entities were seen traversing the skies, and in Leon, Spain, yet another disc-shaped craft was sighted during the daylight hours. As detailed in the records of Josep Gujaro on the 15th of February, around 6 p.m. in Chanco, Chile, numerous individuals witnessed a swiftly moving, bolide-shaped entity streaking across the heavens, leaving a billowy white smoky trail in its wake before eventually disappearing into the distant horizon in the direction of the Pacific Ocean. In March of the same year, in La Jumarde, Haute-Vienne, France, as recounted by Joel Mesnard and Jean-Marie Begyorne, a farmer returning home encountered a glowing green object hovering just above the ground nearby. Approaching the strange craft, when he drew within about 300 feet, he noticed several peculiar figures, each resembling small children in stature, moving in proximity to the object before hastily retreating inside. In a sudden motion, the object ascended into the sky, veering in a zigzag pattern before accelerating into the distance and vanishing within moments. In the early morning of a day in May 1914, near Farmersville, Texas, teenager Sylvie Latham and his older brothers, Sid and Claude, were working in the fields with their two pet dogs, Bob and Fox. While the boys were busy chopping cotton, a sudden deathly howl from their dogs caught their attention. They hurried towards the source of the sound and found their dogs confronting a peculiar little man near a fence in the field. After a tense moment, the dogs bravely attacked the strange being, tearing it apart limb by limb. A few weeks later, in Bilda, Algeria, as reported on a French UFO forum shortly before the outbreak of the First World War, a French settler was on his way home after tending to his field's irrigation system. Suddenly, a bright, glowing sphere appeared in the sky and landed not far from him. Bewildered, the witness hid behind a large hedge and observed several small figures emerging from the sphere, each clad in tight one-piece suits and helmets. After inspecting their surroundings, the beings returned to the sphere, which then swiftly ascended into the sky and vanished. In the early days of summer 1914, around 4 a.m. in the quiet morning hours of Hamburg, Germany, Gustav Hervogen was startled by an otherworldly glow outside his home. Intrigued, he ventured to his front door and pushed it open, revealing a luminous, cigar-shaped object with glowing windows along its side. To his astonishment, near the mysterious craft stood several diminutive figures, each about 4 feet tall and clad in light-colored attire. Curiosity overpowering caution, Gustav approached the beings. But as he drew close, the figures darted back into their vessel, which promptly ascended into the sky and vanished into the distance. As World War I raged across Europe, strange visitors seemed to take an increasing interest in human affairs, with sightings of mysterious craft and alien beings surging near battlefields and beyond. From Russian peasant women encountering figures in red suits to a Bolivian man's terrifying abduction by octopus-limbed entities, the skies and lands were alive with inexplicable phenomena. Even in the remote corners of Norway and Cuba, witnesses reported encounters with everything from glowing airships to shape-shifting creatures that grew larger when shot at, leaving us to wonder, who were these mysterious visitors observing humanity during one of its darkest hours? As the shadows of World War I loomed at the end of July, reports of peculiar aerial phenomena persisted. On the afternoon of August 2nd, near Strezov, Russia, 2 local peasant women toiling in a field glimpsed 2 unusual figures in a neighboring field. Clad in matching red suits, the figures seemed to be manipulating a gray object on the ground. Sensing unease, the women fled from the scene in haste. Simultaneously, a woman from the vicinity reported a large, shadowy mass gliding overhead in the direction of the field where the mysterious figures were spotted. Several days passed when, down in southern Krasnoyarsk in the Ural region of Russia, an encounter with what seemed to be an occupant of a UFO was documented. The story came to light thanks to seasoned researcher Albert Rosales and quickly captured public attention. According to the tale, numerous local residents witnessed peculiar, mysterious flying machines for several consecutive evenings. Yet, on a particular day, one of these crafts touched down just on the outskirts of the village, revealing 2 occupants clearly visible inside. A resident took a shot at the mysterious visitors, but it seemed to have no effect. After a brief moment, the object lifted off once more and vanished into the distance. A little over 2 weeks later, at dawn on the 23rd of August in New South Wales, Australia, 2 young boys observed one of the most peculiar flying vehicles they had ever laid eyes on, one that moved in an entirely unfamiliar manner. Roughly a week after that strange event, as per a report shared by Mervi Virtanen, 10-year-old Arvo Kuopala found himself with his grandmother, Maria Falt, at the family farmhouse in Alastaro, Finland. Suddenly, the early afternoon sunlight dimmed significantly, accompanied by a strange blowing noise. All at once, a burst of light illuminated the farmhouse, and when Maria, closely followed by Arvo, reached the window, they spotted a large, shining globe approaching, coming to a halt just a short distance from the house. As the duo observed, a rounded window slid open on the side of the strange craft, revealing 2 male humanoid shapes within. While bearing a resemblance to humans, their disproportionately large heads caused Avro to feel a sudden surge of fear. Worried about the possibility of the odd men entering through the window, Avro's concerns were assuaged by the assurance that they had come with a message and meant no harm. An exchange of communication ensued between Maria and the cryptic visitors, hinting at potential prior encounters. Subsequently, a brilliant flash illuminated the scene as the craft began to drift away from the vicinity. In the Astrakhan region of Russia, at approximately 3:30 a.m. on the 23rd of September, Vasily Sokolov was making his way home from a business trip on horseback when his attention was captured by a luminous object resembling a bright star overhead. As he continued to gaze at the object, he discerned that it was steadily growing in size, indicating its descent. The closer it approached, the clearer it became that the object possessed a cylindrical form with a brown exterior and a radiant light at what Sokolov presumed to be its front. Upon drawing near, Sokolov noticed a compartment on the underside housing several shadowy figures totaling 6 individuals, with 5 seated and 1 standing. Sokolov's heart raced as fear surged through him, prompting him to sprint to his house's yard, urgently shouting for the light to be extinguished to conceal their presence from the peculiar craft's occupants. Suddenly, his vision was engulfed by a brilliant beam of light shining just ahead of him from the hovering vehicle. In a swift movement, the object shifted its orientation, turning away from Sokolov's residence. As the radiance dimmed, Sokolov's sight was restored, revealing the craft departing into the distance, visible for approximately 10 minutes before vanishing from view. In a chilling encounter from 1914 recounted by UFO researcher Lucy Guzman, David Mendiola Vilches was roused from slumber in his desolate Bolivian home before dawn on December 6th. Startled by the sound resembling a low-flying airplane, he ventured outside to investigate, only to witness a sizable, metallic, cigar-shaped object descending into the neighboring fields. As he ventured outside and neared the vessel, an unexpected tube of radiant light enveloped him in a sudden manner. In the blink of an eye, he found himself inside the craft, without any recollection of how he had transitioned. Surrounding him were eerie entities with pale, slimy skin, oversized heads, and remarkably large eyes. Despite their humanoid features, Vilches noted their limb structure resembling octopus tentacles. Recollections of an examination faded as the next memory was of him back outside his residence, with the strange object and beings now vanished. Regardless of whether they were extraterrestrial crafts, peculiar sightings of airships in Norway captured the attention of many. At approximately 9 p.m., on the 17th of September, in Alta, Norway, the night sky abruptly illuminated with an inexplicable luminous display. Witnesses across the region observed a massive, star-like entity materialize out of nowhere and traverse the sky. While predominantly white, the object sporadically shifted hues to brief glimpses of blue and red before vanishing into the horizon, leaving bystanders bewildered. In Skjolta, Norway, a potential airship sighting occurred on the evening of November 21st. Local reports described an aerial craft near the Skarvær lighthouse, illuminating the building with a brilliant searchlight. Initially spotted over 2,000 feet above ground, the airship later approached as close as 1,500 feet to onlookers below, gliding over the city at that altitude before ascending into the sky and vanishing. Moving to Morgenbladet, on December 20th around 8 a.m., yet another airship sighting unfolded in Norway. Witnesses, including the sheriff of Solheim, observed the airship at a dizzying height, then witnessed it change course and fly towards the sea. During the same period, in Puglia, Italy, although no unusual aerial sightings were reported, there was a tale circulating about locals who had supposedly caught a little green man. Similarly, in Devonshire, England, a local woman recounted seeing a tiny green-colored man with a red cap emerging from some bushes while she was out for a walk. The figure was visible for less than a minute before vanishing into the lush greenery. In another perplexing incident around that time, Jicotia Los Villas in Cuba was home to a bizarre occurrence. 2 men patrolling the perimeter of their sugarcane field one evening found their horses suddenly spooked and refusing to advance. As they searched for the source of their animals' distress, they spied an object on the ground that resembled a white sack but appeared strangely animate. Their bewilderment deepened as the object began approaching them. In a moment of panic, one of the men fired his rifle at the mysterious entity, only to find that with each shot it inexplicably grew larger. Realizing they were facing something beyond their understanding, the men swiftly departed the scene, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. In 1915, amidst subtle yet intriguing occurrences, metallic objects and radiant lights were sighted in various locations. In Celeste, Texas, a local woman witnessed peculiar lights gliding through the town early in the year. Across the Atlantic in Bergen, Norway, a colossal bright brown-red entity twice the size of the moon was observed hovering in the night sky around 11 p.m. It descended and ascended repeatedly before swiftly racing into the horizon, leaving two witnesses in Virchow, Germany, astounded by a similar sight. Fast forward to February, a large dark airship appeared in the skies of Big Fork, Montana on the 9th, followed by 3 such mysterious objects reported by multiple individuals in Brockwell, New York on the 14th. In another peculiar instance in April in Quebeco, Portugal, 4 young girls were spellbound when they stumbled upon a statue-like figure suspended above the trees. The sunlight piercing through it created a translucent effect, leaving the girls bewildered as the figure stood motionless until they wandered off, perplexed by their extraordinary sighting. Months later, in Solhjella, Norway, as documented by Ole Johnny Brena, a local resident observed a peculiar sight, a dark, bell-shaped object descending from the sky and landing in a nearby field. From this mysterious craft emerged 2 small beings with gray skin, disproportionately large heads, and long, wavy dark hair. These odd figures, resembling short humanoids, moved purposefully towards the witness before abruptly changing direction and retreating back into their craft, which promptly vanished into the night sky. Meanwhile, in the Kazan region of Russia, multiple residents reported witnessing a large balloon-like object with bright lights descending from above, while simultaneously observing a cigar-shaped craft hovering over the village, with around 6 occupants visible inside a boat attached to its underside. Adding to the intrigue, Gene Sider's account from Linnigula Kinu Island, Estonia, in October 1915 introduces Tiju Vesik's encounter with 3 silent, soldier-like figures on her way to the post office. These mysterious individuals, seemingly male, passed by unnoticed by others in the vicinity before vanishing into the surrounding woodlands, leaving behind an air of mystery and intrigue. In the early months of 1916, off the Norwegian coast, a group of fishermen sighted a mysterious dark zeppelin swiftly traversing toward the North Pole. Meanwhile, weeks later, in Ballinsloe, Ireland, a bright, glowing entity lingered in the sky for approximately 15 minutes before drifting off into the distance, remaining visible for another 45 minutes before vanishing from sight. During that period, as recounted in a Flying Saucer Review article by Gordon Crichton, Mrs. Whitehead peered out of her second-floor window and observed an unusual airborne craft resembling a circular platform occupied by about a dozen humanoid figures seemingly clutching a handrail. The craft appeared to be approaching her residence, but altered its course just before reaching it, ultimately vanishing into the distance. Arguably one of the most captivating sightings of an anomalous object took place around 8:25 p.m. on January 31, 1916. Notably, the witness was airborne at the time, marking one of the earliest documented pilot sightings. As detailed in the account, British pilot Lieutenant Morgan, flying at an altitude of approximately 5,000 feet over Rochefort in Essex, England, witnessed a dark object adorned with a line of illuminated lights ahead of him. He compared the illuminated sections to closed blinds on a railway carriage window. As he closed in on the mysterious object, his engine suddenly began to malfunction. Rather than backing away immediately, he unleashed a flurry of gunfire at the object. In response, the strange craft swiftly ascended to a significantly higher altitude and swiftly vanished from view. Over Lake Superior in Wisconsin, in the early hours of February 29th, around 4:30 a.m., a group of dock workers observed a big machine measuring 50 feet wide and 100 feet long zooming overhead at great speed. The witness noted that the craft was illuminated by 3 lights, one on each end and a third in the middle. They could even discern several humanoid figures inside the peculiar object. Nearly a month later, a similar craft was sighted by a woman in McPherson County, Nebraska. One day, in April, in Quebeco, Portugal, 3 young children playing in a field experienced a sudden gust of wind, followed by a radiant light hovering just above the trees. Upon investigating the source of the light, they spotted a peculiar figure resembling an angel floating above the treetops. The figure confirmed their belief, declaring itself an angel of peace. It then offered the children a drink and a piece of bread before vanishing into thin air. Even after the angelic figure departed, the children remained in a state of shock, convinced they had truly encountered an angel, devoutly reciting prayers. At dusk, as the sun began to fade, the children regained their composure and made their way back home. In Stavanger, Norway, on the 16th of April, a group of children playing in a field were startled by the sudden appearance of a mysterious cloud. Within the cloud, a bright red light glowed, followed by the unexpected appearance of an ethereal figure described as angel-like. Across the ocean in Rensselaer, Indiana, in May 1916, a farmer witnessed a peculiar sight: a long, dark object hovering just above the ground at a distance of about a mile. After a few moments, the object shot rapidly skyward and vanished in the blink of an eye. Moving on to Cockham Dean in Berkshire, England, a young girl picking berries had a spine-chilling encounter. A slim, humanoid figure dressed in brown clothing and sporting a peculiar hat emerged from the bushes, only to swiftly retreat back into the woodland before the girl could comprehend what she had seen. As we venture into the final years of the First World War, numerous other intriguing cases await our investigation. Though scant on specifics, early in the year in Salida, Colorado, a local minister peered through his telescope to spot a peculiar silver wheel-shaped object suspended in the sky above. In Kharkiv, Karelia, Russia, a few weeks later, another extraordinary UFO landing unfolded. Annie Latu, a local woman, observed a saucer-shaped object descend from the sky and touch down near her home. As she watched, a staircase extended from the side of the object, revealing several small humanoid figures standing in a doorway at the top of the steps. These beings approached Annie, and the next moment she found herself inside their craft. The object then departed, with Annie on board, where she underwent hours of telepathic questioning before being returned home. In Albacete, Spain, several weeks later, the Alguacil family were laboring together in a field when a peculiar hat-shaped object landed nearby. 2 tall humanoid figures emerged from the craft and strolled around, appearing to examine their surroundings or search for something. Clad in shiny metallic gray uniforms, the figures eventually returned to their craft, which then vanished into the sky. In October 1917, near Youngstown, Pennsylvania, 17-year-old John Boback, while walking by the railroad tracks, spotted a peculiar saucer-shaped object in a nearby field. The craft, sporting a metallic exterior and a line of lights along its side, captivated John as it ascended into the air, finally disappearing into the sky. In a period spanning the late months of 1917 to the beginning of 1918, Edwin Bowen and fellow soldiers stationed at Richfield in Waco, Texas, were astounded as they witnessed a lengthy, cigar-shaped object fly directly over their barracks. Hovering at an estimated 500 feet above ground, the mysterious object caught their attention with its lack of visible engines or support structures, and its eerie silence left them in awe. None of the observers had ever encountered anything quite like it before. After the conclusion of World War I, reports of unusual aerial sightings not only persisted but began to rise once more. In Linolv, Lapland, Sweden, young Ragnar Byrland and his siblings were beckoned to the window by their mother to behold a peculiar dark gray object floating just above the ground, seemingly tracing the road. At its center, a cockpit housing 3 humanoid figures adorned with peculiar headgear was clearly visible. The object glided past their residence and vanished into the distance. An akin craft was sighted in mid-January in Greendale, New Zealand, as well as one over Shuttlewood, England, at around 10 p.m. on January 22nd. Concurrently, in Otter Tail, Minnesota, a shadowy object descended abruptly from the clouds to skim above the town at a low altitude. Witnesses were jarred by the potent presence of the object, causing windows to tremble in their frames. After lingering for approximately 2 minutes, the craft swiftly disappeared into the distance. Researcher Jerome Clark illuminates numerous peculiar run-ins with baffling humanoid beings back in the summer of 1919. One of these incidents unfolded just beyond Barron in Wisconsin, involving 13-year-old Harry Anderson, who found himself stranded in a car out of oil alongside his father and 2 companions. Fortunately, a nearby farmer extended a helping hand by providing them with oil from their property, situated approximately 2 miles away. Upon their return to the vehicle, they encountered a bizarre sight. Several diminutive humanoids marching in a line along the roadside, each sporting pallid skin and sizable hairless heads. Maintaining silence, the witnesses cautiously retreated to their car. Weeks later, in Webster City, Iowa, a sibling duo engaged in play in a field caught sight of a peculiar brown-green object near the woodland fringe. As they approached, their attention was snagged by a tall, slender figure standing beside the object, accompanied by a shorter entity scooping water from a stream with a tin can. Subsequently, both figures entered the object, which swiftly ascended into the sky and vanished from view. The surge in UFO sightings and encounters with unexplainable entities during the 1910s becomes unmistakably evident. Compelling numerous reputable members of society, including police officers, judges, and professionals, served as witnesses to these inexplicable occurrences. Hence, even in hindsight, these events pervading all echelons of society resist easy dismissal as mere illusions or fanciful tales. Imagining the countless sightings and encounters that likely went unreported, particularly during the war years, we're left wondering how many secrets of the past might be hidden from history. Could there be revelations from that era waiting still to be discovered in the future, tucked away in forgotten newspaper clippings or diaries? The connections between these sightings and those marking the beginning of the modern UFO era, along with those of our present day, are mysteries yet to be deciphered. Are the strange forces responsible for the early UFO encounters the same as those observed in recent times? And if they're not, who were the visitors from beyond traversing our world in the early decades of the 20th century? With each new revelation, more questions emerge, ready to challenge our understanding of the unknown. Even after World War I ended, mysterious visitors continued their surveillance of Earth throughout the 1920s, with encounters ranging from a young boy's terrifying abduction in Marseille to robotic beings with flower-like faces at a Florida convent school. As aviation took to the skies in greater numbers, pilots began reporting their own close encounters, including a harrowing incident where 6 flying manhole covers circled a stunt pilot's plane over Kansas, and another where a cylindrical object repeatedly approached an airmail pilot's aircraft, causing engine failures before vanishing into the night. Throughout the 1920s, sightings of UFOs and encounters with strange humanoid beings persisted, albeit at a quieter pace compared to preceding and subsequent decades. The reasons behind this temporary decline in aerial sightings remain unclear. Nevertheless, the consistent sightings during this period indicate that whatever was behind these unusual aircraft, their presence endured after the turmoil of World War I. One constant detail was the frequent descriptions of disc- or cigar-shaped vehicles with humanoid occupants, some of whom were observed outside the craft during landing encounters. As aviation technology advanced, reports increased from experienced aviators, including instances of these flying machines closely approaching airplanes. While the rumored fatal aircraft incidents involving UFOs in the late 1940s and early 1950s did not materialize in the 1920s, the evident interest of this apparent alien intelligence in human activities remains evident. One of the most captivating incidents of the early 1920s involved an alleged landing at Mount Pleasant in Iowa. On the 3rd of June, around 10 a.m., Clark Lynch, as reported in the Iowa City Press-Citizen newspaper on the 7th of July, 1920, was working on his father's farm when he abruptly decided to end his workday and go fishing, reasoning that it was his birthday. On the riverbank, a peculiar egg-shaped object materialized from the sky, silently lowering itself with a mysterious hue of transparent blue. Touching down roughly 15 feet away from him, the observer stood still, keeping a close watch for any movement from the object for 15 minutes, yet nothing stirred. Reflecting back, he recalled his cautious pace towards the object, sensing a danger that could have been fatal had he acted otherwise. Contemplating a closer approach, just as he was about to take the next step, the object ascended noiselessly once more. Observing its departure into the heavens, he realized that its color and see-through appearance made it nearly imperceptible amidst the skies. Upon reaching the spot where the object briefly settled, Lynch noticed a clear impression on the grass where it landed, devoid of any scorch marks. Concluding that the small craft was unmanned, given its light weight and absence of occupants, he investigated further. In 1921, a mysterious account surfaced from a witness known only as Mr. G.B., recounting an extraordinary encounter with a vehicle of alien origin. Lost in the sunny countryside of Marseille as an 8-year-old, the witness stumbled across two humanoid figures clothed in peculiar diving gear. As the young boy stood frozen in alarm, the strange beings swiftly seized him by the arms before he could react. They forcibly directed him towards what at first seemed like a peculiar tank to the witness. Without hesitation, they dragged him inside. As fear began to overwhelm him, the young boy's eyes filled with tears, piquing a temporary interest from the peculiar beings. Inside the object, he observed movement, and then suddenly a gap materialized in the ceiling, offering him a glimpse of the outside world. In an instant, he found himself back on the ground, but the object mysteriously vanished. To his astonishment, he was nowhere near where the beings had accosted him, embarking on a lengthy trek that afternoon before finally nearing his home, despite only a 5-minute passage of time from being taken to the craft. By nightfall, upon reaching home, his parents greeted him with a mix of concern and displeasure at his tardiness. Sharing his encounter with them only resulted in disbelief. In early 1922, in an undisclosed location in Poland, witnesses beheld a silvery, disc-shaped object with a rotating ring at its center. Moments later, a beam of light emitted from the craft, which ascended into the sky and vanished amidst a resounding departure. Across the Atlantic, around the same era, sightings in Manitoba, Canada, and Lincoln, Nebraska recounted nearly identical objects traversing the skies in manners unlike any aircraft of the time. In the early morning hours of February 22nd, in Hubbell, Nebraska, William Lamb was out for a walk when his attention was drawn to peculiar tracks on the ground. Intrigued, he decided to follow them. Suddenly, a piercing, high-pitched sound echoed through the air. Turning towards the source of the noise, he witnessed a strange, circular object gliding across the sky directly towards him, eventually touching down in a small clearing. Shortly after, to his astonishment, he spotted an approximately 8-foot-tall creature soaring through the air, emerging from the direction where the unusual object had landed. Meanwhile, in Medford, Oregon, on the evening of June 24th, several residents witnessed a similar peculiar object described as having an unusual appearance. On the 9th of September in Barmouth, Wales, John Morris and William James observed a mysterious object descending into the ocean. Out of caution, they ventured onto the water in a boat, suspecting it could be an aircraft in distress, only to find nothing amiss. In the early months of 1923, 2 college professors in Greencastle, Indiana, reported a sighting of a revolving red object passing overhead. Around the same time in Michigan, 2 female witnesses reported a similar object landing in a nearby swamp for half an hour before taking off into the sky and vanishing. A notable incident from early 1923 in Quetta, Pakistan, recounts an unidentified object exploding in mid-air, causing flaming debris to rain down on the town's buildings below. In June 1923, in northern Wayne County, Indiana, young Norman Massey, age 10, encountered an oval-shaped object near his father's farm as he was letting the horses into the pasture. Startled, he shared the sighting with his father but was instructed to keep it to himself, a secret he kept for 75 years. In the early morning of July 15, 1923, in Sosnovka, Russia, close to the Vyatak River, passengers aboard a steamboat observed a crescent-shaped object for several minutes before it vanished from view. Moving ahead to early 1924 in Dade City, Florida, schoolgirl Evelyn Went at the Holy Name Convent School spotted a peculiar egg-shaped object emitting light not far from where she stood in the schoolyard. The light dimmed before a door on the craft opened, revealing several diminutive robotic beings with faces reminiscent of flowers. Concerningly, these entities seemed to be armed with advanced weaponry and were heading toward the science buildings of the school. She struggled to recall the identity of the person who had warned her about the dangerous entity's intent on interfering with the activities at the science building. Despite her efforts, she couldn't remember the nature of the work or the reason behind the being's opposition to it. Eventually, the creatures seemed to have a change of heart as they retraced their steps back to their vehicle, which swiftly ascended into the sky and vanished. Whether the mysterious encounter was a figment of her imagination or a hazy recollection of a real event remains a topic for speculation. In the year 1924, alongside the peculiar incident in County Wexford, Ireland, two young boys witnessed an odd, solid beam of light gliding near the ground, following the path of a railway track before disappearing into the distance. Similarly, in January 1924, in Melbourne, Australia, several individuals observed 6 disc-shaped crafts flying overhead at a remarkably close range, with witnesses even claiming to see occupants inside these aerial vessels. During the same period, in Osage Hills of Oklahoma, 2 horse riders spotted an oval object emitting a brilliant beam of light down to the snowy terrain from the sky. Another notable encounter from early 1924 occurred in Benest, France, where a spherical object lifted off from a field, moving away at a moderate height before disappearing from view after approximately 1 minute. In the early hours of August 23rd in Saskatchewan, Canada, an oval-shaped craft was reported by a local resident who claimed to have seen humanoid occupants inside. Later that day, in Wellington Bridge, Ireland, 2 17-year-old farm workers witnessed a similar object. A few weeks later, in mid-September, a very similar craft was spotted in Köping, Sweden. In early 1925, in Chelsea, Michigan, 3 witnesses observed an unidentified aerial object moving swiftly and performing unprecedented maneuvers before vanishing after a short period. During the summer of 1925 in Moora, Australia, 2 young men encountered a disc-shaped object on 4 legs in the countryside, causing them fear initially. Although the object disappeared upon their return, markings were left at the spot where it had landed. In August 1925, a metallic disc-shaped object was seen in broad daylight in Birmingham, England, and a similar craft was reported by 2 teenagers in Blecket, Sweden, a couple of months later. In early January 1926, just outside Wichita, Kansas, 6 flying manhole covers were spotted circling an airplane approximately 4 feet across and coming within 10 feet of the aircraft, as reported by witness and stunt pilot Bert Acosta. During the same period in China, Nicholas Roerich and his team members observed a disc or oval-shaped craft suspended high in the vivid afternoon sky. The object's shiny exterior glinted brilliantly under the sun's rays before swiftly zooming into the distance. One early evening in 1926 in Westmount, Illinois, a massive disc-like vehicle was spotted along with 5 smaller disc-shaped objects trailing behind it in perfect alignment. As the objects passed through the cloud cover, their lights illuminated them from within. Several months later, on a September night just outside Salt Lake City, Utah, an airmail pilot encountered a cylindrical object repeatedly approaching his aircraft within a proximity of 150 feet. On each occasion of the strange object's approach, the pilot's plane experienced engine malfunctions, prompting the pilot to perform an emergency landing for fear of plummeting from the sky. As he landed, he witnessed the peculiar craft swiftly shoot off into the dark sky, disappearing within moments. In England, in 1926, young Henry Thomas stumbled upon three beings in Michelin Man-like suits with light bulb-shaped heads, while across the globe, other witnesses reported increasingly bizarre encounters, from underwater UFOs in Italy to a strange woman in Victorian dress emerging from a ball of light in Salerno. Perhaps most incredible was the claim of a Wisconsin farmer who said blonde-haired aliens from Saturn stayed on her property for 10 days, though experts remain skeptical of this particular tale. Will you believe her story? One November evening, in Bolton, Lancashire, England, a young boy named Henry Thomas was engrossed in a game of hide-and-seek within the labyrinthine back streets of the housing estate where he resided. Upon approaching an open gate, his sense of curiosity led him further into the unknown. He eased the door open further and ventured into the backyard, anticipating the presence of his friends. However, to his surprise, he was met by three peculiar humanoid figures donning outfits reminiscent of the Michelin Man, complete with black boots and peculiar transparent dome-like helmets connected via tubes to black backpacks. Sensing his arrival, the trio swiftly turned to meet his gaze, revealing unnaturally pale faces with head shapes akin to light bulbs. As an eerie gurgle emanated from one of them, Henry's instinct propelled him to flee the scene in a frenzied sprint. Despite his genuine fear, he maintained a belief that the peculiar beings meant no harm. Weeks later, in late November or early December, Mary Kibble journeyed back home from Scremerston, Northumberland to Berwick-on-Tweed near the England-Scotland border following a concert. En route, an otherworldly craft materialized with a deafening swoosh, prompting the group of four individuals to huddle in fear, bracing for a potential collision. They observed the craft soar over a roadside hedge, eventually pausing in mid-air, enveloping the surroundings in a mesmerizing neon glow of red and blue. Suddenly, the anomalous object vanished into the skies, leaving the witnesses grappling with the fleeting glimpse of its rounded form. The next day, still mystified and fascinated by what they had seen the night before, the group went back to the same spot. Despite searching the area thoroughly, they found no trace of the object that had puzzled them. In February 1927, in Queensland, Australia, two young siblings saw a disc-shaped object with a domed top fly across the sky. Its brilliance illuminated the entire valley as it landed in a nearby field before lifting off and disappearing. When they visited the field the next day, they found a burnt circle where the object had been. In Sausalito, California, around the same time, writer Ellie Young observed a cigar-shaped craft emerge from the clouds one morning at 9 a.m. outside the Madrona Hotel. She noted its rapid, contracting, and elongating movements. During the summer of 1927, in Nicolae Bălescu, Romania, villagers witnessed a smoke-gray cylindrical object silently glide over at an altitude of 800 feet. It was about 70 feet long. A few days later, in Rovigo, Italy, 11-year-old Francesca C. saw a round, luminous object flying over as she headed to the river for water. To her surprise, instead of crashing, it deliberately went beneath the waves. The young girl gazed at the water for approximately 5 minutes. Suddenly, the craft reappeared, creating multiple bubbles on the surface. Within moments, it swiftly ascended and vanished from view. Just as it emerged from the water, Francesca caught a glimpse through what seemed to be a window or porthole. Peering through the glass, she saw the head and shoulders of a small man. After the object had vanished, the young girl collected the water she had intended to fetch and silently made her way back home, choosing not to disclose the encounter to her mother. In the summer of 1928, in Leicester, England, an unidentified witness was strolling through a field when an unusual aerial vehicle flew overhead, so near that the witness could even discern the occupants of the peculiar craft. Around the same time, at 10 p.m. on an evening in Örebro, Sweden, 4 teenagers observed 2 strange objects purposefully gliding through the sky before disappearing into the distance. Similar sightings of objects were reported in Chandler, Oklahoma in August and in Zoutpansberg, South Africa in October. Unquestionably, one of the most bizarre tales of encountering extraterrestrial beings arose from Lake Geneva in Wisconsin on the 15th of October. During her work on the farm that day, farmer Velma Thayer reported a saucer-shaped craft landing in one of her fields. Shortly after, several little fellows emerged from the object, standing between 4 to 5 feet tall and sporting notably blonde hair. What added to the oddity was that these supposed alien visitors remained on her property for a full 10 days, revealing themselves as hailing from Saturn and merely the reconnaissance crew of a larger, peaceful mission. Understandably, many experts advise taking this particular encounter with a grain of salt. While UFO sightings were relatively scarce throughout most of the 1920s, especially when compared to the prior and subsequent decades, there was a modest uptick in such events in the final year of the decade. One of the earliest incidents took place in Hartford, United Kingdom, where 2 young children witnessed a rounded craft with 2 occupants during daylight in the countryside. A particularly fascinating sighting unfolded around the same time in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. One afternoon, a young boy and his mother strolling through the neighborhood suddenly noticed a peculiar light overhead. The light moved in a perfectly straight line, captivating the pair for several moments. Abruptly, the light shot straight up into the sky and vanished from sight, prompting the mother to caution her son against sharing what they had seen, fearing they would be labeled as crazy. In April of 1929, an extraordinary event took place featuring a mysterious object that may have been of extraterrestrial origin. While Edward Pline was busy photographing a sawmill, he was startled by a deafening noise that filled the air. When he investigated the source of the sound, he was astonished to witness a massive circular craft gliding through the sky. As the object vanished from view, others in the vicinity heard the uproar but did not witness the peculiar craft itself. To Pline's amazement, upon developing the photographs, he discovered a remarkable image capturing what could possibly be one of the earliest depictions of an authentic UFO. If you'd like to see the photo, I've placed a link to it in the show notes. Fast forward to mid-June 1929 in Quebec, Canada, where 20-year-old Lévis Brosé encountered an extraordinary sight on his journey home to Ferme-Neuve. Spotting a dark object with a yellow light ahead, Brosé's horse grew agitated, prompting him to dismount and cautiously approach the peculiar presence. As he drew closer, he observed several diminutive figures near the object, seemingly engrossed in examining the vegetation. After a brief period, the beings re-entered their craft, which then ascended into the sky. Zooming past Brosé at an estimated 50 miles per hour, he noted that the object seemed about 50 feet in diameter, with windows emitting an intense light from within. In the summer of 1929, in Roccaglorioso, Salerno, Italy, a young girl working in a field spotted a peculiar ball of white light at around 2 p.m. Initially stationary, the object then descended near the ground, revealing a door-like opening. After a few moments, a female figure in black attire reminiscent of the 19th century emerged, followed by 2 or 3 smaller figures. The main figure, seeming to float rather than walk, changed course towards the woods before disappearing from sight. The witness, alarmed, ran to seek her father, who found nothing amiss in the area but detected a mysterious scent of roses. Meanwhile, in Spring Valley, New York, a local resident encountered odd beings with short, distorted bodies, large heads, and attire resembling diving suits while out for a walk. This unusual sighting caught the attention of veteran UFO researcher Bud Hopkins, who investigated the incident as a potential alien abduction case. In the warm July of 1929, in the quaint town of Robsart, Canada, Einar Rostevold and a group of 4 others gazed in awe as a magnificent ball of light danced across the sky, radiating fiery hues as it moved purposefully overhead. To their amazement, the luminous object seemed to gently touch down a short distance away before gradually fading into the night, leaving the witnesses spellbound with wonder. Albert Rosales' intriguing records reveal a striking encounter on the afternoon of July 5th in the rugged lands of Burns, Oregon. A mother and her son traversing the rocky terrain suddenly found themselves under the gaze of a peculiar object that appeared above their vehicle, pausing mysteriously before hovering just ahead. Peering through a transparent window, the astonished witnesses beheld 2 eerily human-like figures inside, seemingly pointing directly at them. As the son moved to investigate, the craft vanished in a blink, leaving the pair bewildered by its swift departure. In another extraordinary account noted by Rosales, the tranquil lands of the Novgorod region in August 1929 became the stage for young Anna Petrovna Polotayeva's strange journey. While walking past Gusevskoye Lake on her way to visit her parents, she was captivated by a peculiar airborne contraption gliding just above the water's surface. Anna later detailed the object as round and wingless, with a glass-like upper portion and a copper-hued underside, adding a touch of mystery to her day. In the upper section, Anna could clearly discern two human-like figures, one male and the other female. Despite their strikingly human appearance, she was suddenly overwhelmed by a wave of fear and swiftly turned to flee. Glancing back once, she observed that the object remained motionless just above the water. In Krini Chalkidki, Greece, during a midnight in the same month, 19-year-old Theosaurus Moustakis was heading home with a cart of flour after milling wheat at a nearby mill. Suddenly, he spotted what seemed like a parachute descending from the sky and landing in a field by the roadside. Upon witnessing three small figures clad in white hooded garments and speaking an unfamiliar language at the landing spot, he was frightened and swiftly made his way back to his village. A reminiscent event occurred in Brazil later that year, where a large, shiny, white metallic vessel with numerous windows was observed on the ground. Two human-like figures clad in shiny, silvery attire were seen near the craft. In the depths of the North Atlantic Ocean, an intriguing occurrence unfolded aboard the SS Coldwater. One night, far from the Virginia coast, crew member Thomas Stewart witnessed a remarkable sight: a brilliant light streaking toward Bermuda at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour. Stewart likened the light to a sprawling passenger aircraft, yet a subsequent search of the area revealed no trace of the mysterious phenomenon. The light's trajectory towards Bermuda added to the mystique, as the region would later become synonymous with inexplicable disappearances of vessels and aircraft throughout the 20th century. These outlandish incidents persisted, albeit less frequently, amidst the backdrop of the 1920s. Accounts of peculiar aerial crafts and encounters with cryptic humanoid figures continued to surface, often sharing striking similarities. Such recurring reports implied a tangible reality underlying these phenomena, hinting at a significant presence at play. One might ponder the relative silence of the 1920s in contrast to other decades teeming with reports of unidentified flying objects. Could it be that the extraterrestrial entities speculated to roam Earth had shifted focus elsewhere, deeming our planet of diminished interest? And if so, when did this dominant alien race of the modern UFO era first set foot on our world? Or could it be that these contemporary beings are descendants of those who graced the early 20th century, their visits dwindling purposefully after their initial reconnaissance missions?